Maybe in all spheres of your life, you are securely attached, but you go to work and you're avoidant.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. I'm Maya Lane.
And I'm Michael, and we're on the grad school journey to becoming licensed therapists.
Come with us to class as we discuss and dissect all we can learn about mental health, relationships, therapy techniques, and everything in between.
With your two favorite therapists in training, this is Therapy in Progress.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Maya Lane, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Good to be back. For those of you just joining us, I am Michael.
And I'm Maya Lane.
And we are therapists in training in grad school, and this is Therapy in Progress, which is...
Welcome here. So Therapy in Progress is taking you to class with us on our journey, giving you some practical tips and information on mental health, mental disorders, treatments, all the things.
Everything psychology under the sun as we're learning.
Mm-hmm. Today we're talking about attachment styles.
Yes, very important.
Very important.
What is an attachment style?
Attachment styles are how we relate to other people and connect to them. And it's rooted in our childhood and how we bonded with our caregivers growing up.
And I feel like oftentimes we think of it specifically in romantic relationships, but I think it can also be applicable to any kind of relationship, friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be your friendships. It could be your peers. It could even be your colleagues at work.
Absolutely. So take us we'll get into specifics, obviously, but take us broadly through what are the different attachment styles that we're looking at.
So high-level overview, we have 4 different attachment styles. The first one is secure attachment, and this is the goal. So this is what we may be striving for. Then we have avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, and disorganized attachment.
Should we go through a little bit of what each of those look like?
Absolutely.
Should we do a history lesson?
Let's do a history lesson.
Hey, some mental health history.
Woo.
There was this psychologist named Mary Ainsworth. In the early 1970s, she devised what they call the strange situation experiment, which was studying infants and how they related to their caregivers. When introduced into a room, you had the parent, the infant, and a stranger. And basically the situation would be the parent coming and going in various patterns, the stranger coming and going in various patterns, and measuring what is the infant's reaction.
Okay.
And there were very different reactions measured that started to categorize into these 4 different attachment styles.
Yeah. What did each of those look like?
So secure attachment was a baby who was moderately, appropriately upset when the parent left, but then easily comforted upon the parent's return. Anxious was the baby who was very upset when the parent left, maybe too upset, but then when the parent returned, was not able to be comforted.
Interesting.
So very upset and also
could not be comforted.
Avoidant is the baby kind of didn't care, like had little or no reaction to what the parent was doing.
Right.
And then disorganized was very erratic. They would notice really interesting physical oddities that the baby would be engaging in, not really being able to track the relationship with the parent. Disorganized, which is why they started calling it that. Yeah.
All right.
You want to talk a little bit about maybe where each of those comes from?
Sure. So secure attachment essentially means that you've created a bond with your parent that is safe, that is comfortable, you feel supported. This could be achieved in early childhood through just responsiveness of the parent, the warmth of the parent, and the positive interactions with those parents.
The baby learning that when I need something, my caregiver is there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Having that safety net, so to speak. When we're talking about anxious attachment, those are individuals who may have a sort of helicopter parent, perhaps, or it could be the exact opposite, where the parent wasn't present. And so the reaction is big, trying to gain some kind of reaction from the parent.
One or the other, or a mix if there was inconsistency in parenting. And as a very young person, the child isn't able to track a steady pattern of when will my needs be met and when will they not. So then trust issues start bubbling up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And kind of in that same realm, we have avoidant. So they had caretakers that were completely unreliable. So they had to be independent. They had to learn how to self-soothe and fend for themselves, so to speak.
Yeah, so someone who really had to be self-sufficient early on. And we'll obviously in a second talk about how that carries into adulthood.
Yeah.
And then what about disorganized?
Disorganized, this one is the toughest. It typically comes from situations of abuse and neglect. A lot of times addiction is also involved with the caretakers. So these parents or caretakers were not able to show up in a safe way for the child, and the bond created a lot of distrust.
So maybe a history of some trauma. Yeah, that's the tough one.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit about where these come from. Let's carry it into now as adults. These are still very present.
Very much so.
What is that looking like?
So I want to start by getting into the self-talk. So that's really the basis and the foundation for how we interact with other people, is how we talk to ourselves. So someone who has secure attachment, they're going to say things to themselves like, I believe in myself. I can handle anything that comes my way. I can be independent, and I can rely on others too when necessary. And I can affect positive outcomes in my life. So if I work hard, I will see the results.
Sure. So what does that kind of self-talk look like in a relationship? How does that manifest?
Right. So if you know that I can rely on myself and I can also ask for support from you, then there's no imbalance there. I know that I can get support in either way. So I don't need you, but I can have the support should I want it, should I feel like I need it. I also have the confidence to be able to say, I can handle anything. So if I have a bad day, I know that it's temporary. I know that the next day I can wake up and things might be different. I can accept things as they are and move forward.
Which is why these secure attachment relationships, in a way, are the goal, because it has this really healthy, open communication.
Right.
And this ability to trust, and this ability to both care and be taken care of.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. So what else does a secure attachment relationship in adulthood look like?
So people with secure attachment are more likely to see themselves as lovable. So they are confident in their ability to love others and to receive that love back. And that's really important.
And I feel like also in terms of conflict resolution, problem solving, this is a very emotionally mature way to conduct yourself in a relationship. You know, a lot of securely attached people are able to have tough conversations and not play games or attack the other, or you know, it's associated with that higher level of emotional intelligence, which is being able to be vulnerable and open about what you're going through.
Yeah.
Talk to me about anxious attachment self-talk.
So anxious attachment styles, their self-statements sound more like, I'm not as worthy as others. I need to rescue everyone. So these could be people pleasers. I fear being on my own, and I need to analyze everything.
So what we tend to see a lot with this, very commonly, is when somebody might be referred to as clingy or needy.
Yes.
This is someone in a relationship who needs a lot of reassurance and has a fear of abandonment. It goes back to what we were talking about in childhood. You never knew, is my caregiver going to be there or are they not? This can be really tough in relationships, because if one of the partners, for example, if it's a romantic relationship, but even in a friendship, if one of the partners is anxiously attached and is requiring constant reassurance, that can really wear on the other person.
Yes.
And that can cause a lot of problems for people.
Especially if there's the assumption that they could leave or that they're going to leave.
Yeah.
And it's creating more of that anxiety, more of that need to pull that person back in.
Yeah.
It can be very taxing on the partner who is not anxiously attached.
Yeah, and who might be feeling like no matter what I do, it never seems to be enough. I can't reassure you enough that I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about avoidant attachment?
Avoidant attachment, these are the lone wolves. These are the people who, when they talk to themselves, they only think they are as good as their last achievement. They feel like they need to be in control at all times. They keep others at arm's length, and they'll say to themselves when the going gets tough, I go it alone. I don't need anybody else. I can do it myself. What's interesting with people who have avoidant attachment style is that they often don't see a problem with their attachment style because they're so independent. They see that as the positive. I don't need anyone, so there's no problem. However, when they do get into a relationship, they're less likely to be vulnerable with the other person, creating kind of this distance. And it makes it really hard for people to connect with them and for them to connect with others.
Check on your chronically single friends, folks. Absolutely. This avoidant thing is a real, as you were saying, a real fear of, even if subconsciously, a fear of being vulnerable, opening yourself up. And I think what gets overlooked is a lot of times it can be masked with humor.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can be like, I have my walls up, I'm so guarded, but it can be real. It can be someone who isn't able to feel safe enough to form those deep relationships. Also, I feel like other problems that it can cause in a relationship is, say an avoidant person does end up in a relationship, not only does that person have a hard time opening up, but they might not have the tools to know how to comfort their partner.
Yeah.
Because they don't have that emotional language. So an avoidant person who's in a relationship might not be the support to their partner that the partner needs.
Right.
So
which creates even more distance.
Yeah.
Even more lack of connection.
Yeah.
I also think that another component of this is people tend to think that those who have an avoidant attachment style do not want to be in a relationship. And that's not really the case. They do want that closeness. It's just really hard for them to get there.
Totally.
Because back when they were little kids, they couldn't have that safety, that vulnerability, that reliance on their caregiver. So it's hard for them to rely on anybody else.
Yeah. How about disorganized?
Disorganized. So I feel like this one is very misunderstood. A lot of times people get a little confused. They think that disorganized means that people with this attachment style have both anxious and avoidant attachment styles kind of combined into one. But that's not the case. It's really its own individual attachment style that is completely unique from the others. So people who have this attachment style will typically talk to themselves in a way that says, I deserve to suffer. I cannot control my emotions. My life is in constant chaos. And in relationships, it sounds a lot like, I hate you, don't leave me.
Say that again.
I hate you, don't leave me.
I hate you, don't leave me. So we see this a lot with personality disorders.
Yes.
We see this a lot with other mental health conditions.
Right.
Very, very turbulent relationships.
These can be really hard to navigate because it's so unpredictable. And that's really a symptom of that chaotic upbringing.
Yeah.
Of perhaps cycles of abuse or addiction, neglect. For these individuals, they're really seeking love and belonging, but they didn't know how to get those needs met as a child. They only knew how to react, so to speak.
And now as adults, they want that closeness, but they don't know how to not push someone away.
Right.
It's almost an involuntary reaction.
Because you're scared of that closeness when you get it, but at the same time you crave it so much.
Right.
It's unsafe to feel that closeness.
Yeah.
That reliance. It's also uncomfortable to feel alone.
I do want to point out that attachment styles are just one axis in very dynamic and complicated relationships.
Yes.
So I think that sometimes there's this misconception that, if you're securely attached, you're the perfect partner. That's not true. It just means that you're securely attached, but you can still have any host of other relationship issues.
Yes.
These, I just want to be clear, are ways of describing, just in a general sense, how we interact with our relationships to other humans.
Yeah.
But just because you're secure doesn't mean everything's perfect. Just because you're anxious or avoidant doesn't mean you're a bad partner.
No.
It's just certain difficulties that might pop up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with that, you can have more than one attachment style. You might not fit neatly into one box. You may have more than one. It can also change throughout your life. So if maybe you had a secure attachment with your parents as a kid, you get into maybe your first relationship as a young adult, but it's toxic. Now, maybe in that relationship, you've developed an anxious attachment style just based on the nature of that relationship and what it brings out in you.
Maybe that relationship is with someone who you've learned that you can't really trust. So you become a little bit what we might call clingier because you are maybe even subconsciously really trying to make sure that you keep them.
Right.
Right? That doesn't necessarily come from your upbringing, but you have learned in this relationship oh, I am anxiously attached because I don't trust this person not to leave.
Mm-hmm. I also want to mention that your attachment style can change in different contexts. So maybe in all spheres of your life, you are securely attached, but you go to work and you're avoidant.
We've all been there.
We've all been there.
What might that look like?
So that might look like when you go into work and you're achievement based. So you are not worth anything unless you achieve a certain goal. You're not interacting so much with your coworkers. You're keeping them at an arm's length. You don't want to ask for help when you need it.
Let's talk a little bit about what can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start at the top. If you're securely attached, congrats, you win. I'm just kidding. If you're securely attached, don't get complacent. Like we were talking about. Continue to nurture that open communication.
Yeah.
But you're starting from a really good spot. That's the good news.
Mm-hmm.
What they say a lot for anxious attachment, if you're someone who one of the partners really needs a lot of reassurance, you can establish reassurance patterns. You know, if you're both off at work every day, if your partner tells you, hey, it just makes me feel a lot better, if just like one time in the afternoon you shoot me a text, some words of affirmation, you're thinking about me, you know, little things like that you can help each other out.
Yes.
You know, what about avoidant?
For avoidant, that really starts within. So because they're so achievement based, it could start with perhaps writing down a list of your qualities. So let's say you identify yourself primarily with high achieving titles, but you haven't written anything down about your roles in relationships, about maybe your spiritual or hobby activities. Maybe you look to those and nurture those identities as well. Look at your other strengths. Where else do you have strengths that aren't achievement based? What other roles do you take up in your life? Maybe a sister, partner, friend.
And I also think for both avoidant and disorganized, don't be afraid of help. Don't be afraid of therapy, especially for disorganized. That might take a little bit more of a hands-on intervention.
Right.
They find, you might notice, we'll get into personality disorders later, but fear of abandonment, which is a huge component of a disorganized attachment style, that is one of the hallmarks of borderline personality disorder.
Right.
A form of therapy that we call DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, has been shown to be very effective, not just for borderline, but for disorganized attachment style, because it really helps individuals learn how to not just live in the discomfort that you might be caused by some of these emotions and some of these fears, but once you learn to live with them, they get a lot quieter. And people who historically have had disorganized attachments can settle into really healthy, loving relationships once they learn those tools and those skills of how to quiet those thoughts and how to, it sounds cheesy maybe, but accept love.
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely. That is one of the foundational aspects of DBT, is that acceptance.
Yeah.
That's the first step to healing.
So speaking of that, why are we talking about this? What do you want people to get from this conversation?
From this conversation, I think it's helpful for people to understand how they interact with their external relationships and also with their relationship with themselves. Because how we talk to ourselves and the expectations that we have of others is really what propels us and moves us in the world. And at the core of it, intimacy and connection is truly what makes the human experience so special. That genuine, authentic connection between people. And when we have these barriers with avoidant, disorganized, and anxious attachments, it's a barrier to that connection. And there are things that we can do to improve upon it.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that if somebody recognizes one of these patterns either in themselves or in their partner, and maybe didn't have the language for it before, didn't know what was going on, why, won't my partner open up to me? Or why won't my partner believe that I love her and I'm here, I never seem to be able to do enough to reassure her.
Yes.
If you haven't had these words before, maybe you can start to realize, oh, I might be avoidant. Oh, that person might be anxiously attached. And once you have that understanding, you can also know that there are ways to improve it.
Yeah.
And that there are tools available. Once you understand what's going on, you can start to kind of get in there and dissect it and rejigger it and hopefully improve it.
That understanding is so powerful because it breeds empathy, not just for yourself, but for your partner as well.
Yeah.
So, and that can really strengthen the relationship and the connection and the intimacy between people.
Yeah. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
What do you think you are?
I am mostly secure, but I tend to lean a little bit avoidant.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
How does that manifest for you?
I seem to be vulnerable with people, but really I'm keeping them at an arm's length.
Oh.
I kind of pick and choose what I share with people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm extremely achievement based. If I'm not constantly seeking that next goal, that next milestone, I feel pretty worthless, like I'm not contributing. So I really need that motivator to keep me going.
Sure.
What about you?
I think same for me. I think I'm largely secure, especially with friendships. I think I'm very securely attached. I pride myself on really open communication. I believe in, I don't do drama. In relationships, I think secure, leaning a little bit anxious. I can get a little jumpy sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that's a small, especially because I have that awareness.
Yeah.
I can take steps to tamp that down. I think oftentimes, to put this into kind of real world context, if you have a partner who's very, very jealous, that oftentimes is an anxiously attached person.
Right.
Someone who will take tiny little things and feel threatened by them because they are anxious for that possibility of abandonment or hurt or something like that.
And this can be exasperated if an anxious attachment person is in a relationship with someone who's more avoidant. So because that avoidant person can't be vulnerable, they have a lot of trouble navigating conflict. If the anxious attachment person is seeking out certain validation and it's too much for the avoidant, they're going to pull back, which is going to make the anxious attachment person try to cling on more. And it just becomes this cycle of pushing and pulling people away.
Can we play a game?
Sure.
Okay.
I love games. I'm so excited.
So there's Tom and there's Brenda.
Okay.
They're in a relationship. Okay. I'm going to give you a situation, and you tell me what Brenda's reaction would be if she were secure, if she were anxious, if she were avoidant, and if she were disorganized.
Okay.
So we can get some real-world application. Tom tells Brenda, hey, there's this woman at my office, Sally. She and I are going out to dinner tonight. We have some work stuff to talk about. In each of those 4 attachment styles, what is Brenda's reaction?
So for secure attachment, Brenda would likely take Tom's word exactly as it is. There may be some tinge of jealousy or feelings of uncertainty with it.
Well, that's great. If that's so, being securely attached, what's Brenda going to do?
Brenda will acknowledge that she's having those feelings. She may confide in Tom about it, but she knows that she'll be able to handle whatever comes next. She's confident in her ability to handle those feelings and rationalize them. And if she can't rationalize them in an effective way, she could always go to Tom
and have an open conversation.
Yes.
We love an open conversation.
Love open conversations.
Hey, Tom, this is how I'm feeling about Sally. I just wanted you to know.
Yeah.
Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, if Brenda was anxiously attached, what would her reaction be?
She would probably get jealous immediately, probably would expect Tom to recognize her discomfort without her having to say it. She would get mad at Tom. She might accuse him of cheating instead of trying to have an open conversation, a dialogue. It would be more accusatory in nature.
A little bit more attacky.
Yes, exactly. Saying, you're cheating on me, or you have feelings for this person, you have ulterior motives, don't you care about me? Wouldn't you want to stay here with me instead? Things like that.
What about if Brenda were avoidant?
If Brenda were avoidant, she may have these feelings of jealousy or this sense of like impending abandonment.
Or danger.
But may just deny these feelings, throw herself into her work, whatever project she's working on. If Tom were to recognize that something was wrong and he asked her, she may say, nope, nothing's wrong. Just deny the whole thing.
I'm fine.
Everything's
fine.
Because she doesn't, in her head, she doesn't need him. He can go off and do whatever. She's just going to work.
And she is not comfortable with opening up vulnerably about how she's feeling. Okay, and disorganized?
Disorganized. This would probably be a bigger reaction. Similar to probably an anxious attachment style. It would be accusatory, but then following that, saying, I don't need you. Go be with her.
You clearly love her more than you love me anyway.
Right.
Big extreme reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hate me. You never loved me at all.
So I hope that kind of contextualizes what each of these might look like in practice. Because I think we do a little bit of all of it every day.
Yeah.
You know? And like you said at the beginning, some people might be one way with their friends and another way in their relationship and another way at work and another way with their parents, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it can change over time.
Yeah.
And if you're unhappy with the way you're connecting with people now, you can change it if you want to.
My own philosophy that I try to impart on people is that openness in relationships, friendships, whatever it is, short-term scary, long-term so much benefit.
Yes.
We want to avoid those tough conversations because they're just unpleasant to have, but in the long term it really builds such a more solid foundation.
Yeah.
You know? And it actually kind of gets fun. I've found that when I bring up a conversation that a friend maybe doesn't expect me to bring up, like, hey, I noticed, you know, when I said this thing, you had this reaction and I feel like it bothered you. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
It really disarms people. I feel like so often we don't do that kind of thing that at first I'll kind of notice them have a like, oh, are we gonna, and then they kind of relax into it and then we have a great conversation.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. I would encourage people to try it out and see how it feels.
I think also with that openness, being open to explore within yourself that attachment style, maybe where it came from in childhood, and then reparenting yourself, being open to the idea of, I am currently a mature adult and I can recognize that my younger self is having a certain reaction because of what she went through or what he went through or what they went through.
Wow, yeah.
And being able to tell that little version of yourself, it's okay. This is hurting right now, but we know how to cope. We know.
That's such a great metaphor. You have that little version of yourself inside at all times. And sometimes they are the ones having the reaction instead of you.
Yeah. Because logically,
You just blew my
as
mind.
an adult, yeah, I think a lot of people as an adult can logically look back and say, oh, these things happened because of X, Y, and Z. So my parents weren't able to show up for me in whatever ways I needed them to because of certain circumstances. Logically, as an adult, we know that. But the small version of us does not know that.
Right, and sometimes the small version wins and you'll have the reaction.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Have you ever had one of those moments where you're venting to a friend and you're like, I know that XYZ, but I still feel ABC.
Yes.
And it's like you can't sometimes, our emotions and our minds are more powerful than our logic.
Absolutely.
But then we can use that parenting.
You can use your current self, your older, more experienced, more logical self.
Wiser.
Your more wiser self.
Graduate degree in clinical psychology.
This version of ourselves can kind of talk our younger self through it. So maybe we won't be able to use logic all the time to help soothe it, but we can say we have the coping mechanisms to deal with it now. We know the healthy steps that we need to take to move forward so that we can have those healthy relationships, not just with other people, but within ourselves.
Love that. Can we do a class check-in?
Yes.
What did you learn in class this week? What was a lesson or an activity that was fun?
I had the coolest class last night actually, for my individual couple and family development, a lifespan approach class.
Like a life cycle class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was actually about attachment styles. We had Dr. Judy Ho come in, and she has a book, The New Rules of Attachment. It's a great book. It goes over all the attachment styles, how they happen, what we could do to heal that attachment style, how to reparent ourselves. It's an excellent breakdown. There's a lot of really fascinating workbook activities in there as well. So highly recommend it. But she zoomed in and answered all of our questions. Something that I thought was really fascinating that she brought up was this idea of digital co-regulation, which I had never heard of before.
Enlighten me.
Yeah. So in this new digital landscape that we've been in for a while, but it seems to be getting more and more and more online, especially with the introduction of AI, there is an idea that people are turning to social media AI chatbots, etc., in order to be a surrogate for emotional co-regulation. Emotional co-regulation is, for example, if you and I were having a conversation and I was confiding in you about something, I'm getting something out of that interaction because I'm getting something off of my chest and I'm feeling supported by you. You're also getting something from that interaction where you feel like you're helping me and that's making you feel good. And we're strengthening our bond as well. But with digital co-regulation, it's much more one-sided and it's not as fulfilling. So instead of going to somebody else to get that emotional support, people are just going online to get kind of that dopamine fix to make them feel better, even if it's not actually helping.
Sure.
Because it's that quick, instant gratification of feeling a little bit better right now.
I was listening to a interview, and the person was talking about how that in some way we are so, you're talking about that constant dopamine hit.
Right.
We have become so reliant on it that we're kind of afraid to just be.
Yeah.
Without it, be driving in silence or be in the shower not listening to something.
Yeah.
But those moments of being by yourself are important.
It is.
And I'll notice it in myself. I'm always listening to something when I'm driving. Silence can be uncomfortable. But we have been trained to always have some kind of stimulation.
Yeah.
But I think I've been trying to play around with that and train myself that, you know what, today on this drive, this 15-minute drive, I'm just going to be alone with my thoughts.
How does that go?
It depends on the day. I've noticed that if I'm having a good day, I'm totally, happy to be alone with my thoughts. And if not, sometimes I want that distraction. I want that dopamine. Yeah. But it's a fun exercise, I think, to play around with and see, can I wean myself off of the companionship that we all have constantly? And it's something that, is as simple as like pulling out your phone when you're standing in line to like check Instagram. It's like, you can just stand in line.
Can we talk about how avoidant that is?
Come on, theme. Come on, bringing it back.
We get on our phones and we're missing out on all the connection around us that we could be having with other people. Back in the day, I mean, I'm a little too young to remember this, but I could imagine instead of being on our phones, we were making eye contact with other people.
Yeah.
We were smiling at other people, maybe having small talk, making new friends when we're standing in line at Starbucks instead of just scrolling.
I lived in New York for several years, and on the subway, it would always make me sad, and I would be one of them. I don't count myself as not one of the people doing this, but we were all on the subway on our phones. So sometimes it's so interesting, just the feeling that you get seeing a whole room of people together but not. Sometimes I would bring a book, and that would, even I was still, completely to myself reading my book, but somehow that felt better. Reading a book instead of being on my phone, I felt like I was a little bit less isolated.
Yeah, because at least you were present in that location.
Right.
If you're reading a book. It feels so dystopian to look around and just see everyone looking at their phones, not looking up, not interacting. There's something so uncanny about when you become cognizant.
And the frustrating thing about it, we'll get more into this, I'm sure, when we have one of our many social media conversations, but it's designed to be that way. These apps, these websites are designed to be addictive.
Yeah.
Because that's how they make their money off of us.
Yeah.
And they do a really damn good job at, you're constantly, what are my notifications? What's happening? What am I missing? And that's very, very specific.
It is.
Specifically designed, They
have such a monopoly on our attention. All these apps.
Attention monopoly.
Attention monopoly.
That's a great way to say it. Yeah. Any last thoughts? I have one for a career check-in.
Let's hear it.
We were talking in class about people's schedules for when they're taking. So we have two classes. We have a pre-practicum, which kind of walks us through the process of applying to a practicum site and deciding where we want to work for our practicum.
Yes.
And then practicum actually begins, right? So I was talking to a lot of different people last night in class about when they're planning to take pre-practicum, when they're planning. So you're planning on taking pre-practicum this upcoming semester.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not. I'm going a little bit more slowly than you are, so I'm already feeling behind. I'm already feeling that pressure of like,
no,
people, my peers are going to get out in the world and start doing the thing. All of 6 months before I do, but still, it feels like a lot.
it can feel like a lot of time because we're in a program and everyone's moving at a different pace. We are in an evening format, so there are people who have full-time jobs and families, and there are some people who are trying to get through it as quick as possible. Trying to get through it as quick as possible.
Which I admire the amount of work. But you know what? This is good because you can show me the ropes.
Yeah, I'll give you all the tips.
I'm going to have
tricks.
no idea how to apply to practicum, and you can...
I'll walk you through it.
Teach me how Tavera works and all that good stuff. That's awesome.
All right, Michael. So what are our main takeaways?
Takeaways. Check in with yourself. Maybe do some poking and prodding. What might your attachment style be? What might your partner's attachment style be?
Yes.
And if you feel that your attachment style is causing you a little bit of trouble in your friendships or in your romantic relationships, what can be done?
So some of the steps that you can take are you can reach out to a therapist. You can also talk to your partner, have an open and honest communication. Being vulnerable can be challenging, but it's the most important and first step to creating that positive change in your life. Accepting where you're at, taking the steps to move forward.
Totally.
Anything to add?
I think we covered it.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. This has been Therapy in Progress. Join us next time. We'll be talking about all sorts of good stuff. And feel free to send us any thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to cover.
Please do. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. All right. Talk to you soon, Mylene.
Talk to you soon, Michael.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Therapy in Progress is produced for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to substitute for professional medical or mental health care.
Views expressed here are our own. If you're in need of support, we encourage you to reach out to a licensed professional.
Your mental health matters. Talk to you next time.